These are three of the creepiest school horror stories you'll ever hear. True or not, we'll let you decide. But one thing is certain. Some classrooms should never be reopened. Let's begin. I was 12 the year it happened. Sixth grade. Still young enough to believe in ghosts, but old enough to pretend I didn't. It was late autumn, golden skies, bare trees, that strange quiet where everything feels like it's waiting for winter. And it all started because I forgot a notebook. On Friday, during 5:15 p.m., school had let out hours earlier, and I was already halfway home when I realized my science notebook was still in my desk in room 6B. It wasn't just any notebook, it had the entire semester's worth of notes, and our big group project was due Monday. There was no way I could recreate everything before then. So I texted my two closest friends, Ryan and Josh. I texted that. I left my notebook. Want to come back with me? Ryan replied instantly, saying, Bet. I'm bored. Josh sent a skull emoji and said, Cursed school visit after dark? I'm in. We live close by, and the school wasn't far, a 10-minute bike ride. We figured we'd be in and out before sunset. But something about that evening air made the playground feel off. It was too still. The swings didn't sway. The flagpole rope didn't clink. The building stood hunched under a sky smeared with fading gold. Shadows stretched across the windows, and the breeze carried that dry leaf hush that makes your skin crawl for no reason. Still, we laughed it off. Kids being kids. Around 5:30 p.m., we reached the main door. They were surprisingly open. Mr. Henderson, the janitor, often left them unlocked during his evening cleanup. The halls were silent. That deep, empty silence that hums in your ears. Our footsteps echoed too loud. We headed toward room 6B. I just wanted my notebook and to get out. But as we passed the west wing, Josh slowed down and pointed, and whispered, You know that room? It was a classroom with a rusted nameplate. Room 3C. The door was different, heavier, wooden, reinforced with a bolt lock. The windows were sealed with dusty paper taped from the inside. Josh said, That's the room where the guy hanged himself. A teacher, or maybe a parent. My cousin told me. Ryan rolled his eyes and said, That's every school rumor ever. Still, something about that door, it felt wrong, like it had weight, even without anyone touching it. Josh grinned like a movie villain and said, Let's open it. Ryan was not happy with that. I laughed nervously and said, We're just here for my notebook, remember? But Josh wasn't listening. He reached into the stairwell where a small fire extinguisher box was mounted. Behind it, taped to the wall, was a key. Emergency access. Henderson probably used it. Josh said, See? Fate wants us to go in. The key slid into the lock and turned with a heavy click. We step into room 3C. It hadn't been touched in years. Desks covered in thick dust. A tattered globe toppled on its side. The chalkboard smeared with faded streaks of yellow. The air was cold. So cold. Colder than the hall. Colder than outside. My breath fogged. Josh stepped into the center and said, It's creepy. Definitely haunted. Ryan hung back. I wandered a little, fingers brushing a desk with deep scratches in the wood, like someone had clawed it in panic. All right, I said, Cool haunted room. Now can we go? Josh, of course, was at the teacher's desk, and he said, This is where he sat, huh? Or maybe where he tied the rope. Ryan said, Shut up. Josh sat on the desk dramatically, mimicking hanging himself with his hoodie strings. We groaned. You're so dumb. Nothing creepy happened. No cold spots. No whispering voices. Just a dumb, dusty room. We were almost out the door. Then it happened. A crash. Like wood snapping and a chair slamming onto the tile. We froze. The noise came from directly behind us, from inside room 3C. We turned. There was a man hanging from the ceiling. He hadn't been there 5 seconds earlier. Now he hung directly above the teacher's desk, suspended by a rope that hadn't existed before. His feet dangled just above a tipped-over chair. He wore old, stained slacks, a white button-down shirt stretched tight at the neck. His skin was gray, bloated, and bruised. His eyes, wide, open, bulging, stared right at us. Not blankly, directly at us. Ryan screamed. Josh stumbled back into the lockers. I felt my knees go weak. Then the man twitched, just slightly, like something had yanked the rope tighter. We ran toward the exit, we tore down the hall, knocking over chairs and garbage cans. I swear I heard the creak of a second chair falling behind us. We burst through the main doors and didn't stop until we reached the bikes. Ryan was shaking. Josh was pale. That was, Ryan stammered. It was real, I said. You both saw him. The chair tipped on its own, Josh whispered. There was no one in that room. I swear. We'll look back at the school. Windows dark. Still. Ordinary. Too ordinary. Like nothing had happened. None of us slept that night. The next morning, we texted each other every hour, asking, "Did you see the news?" Nope. Nothing. Maybe we imagined it. But we hadn't. We all saw the same thing. By Sunday, I was too scared to go near my notebook. It sat on my desk, tainted somehow. That night, I had a dream. The classroom, the rope, the eyes, the man swinging, slowly, creaking, smiling. When I woke up, my bedroom chair was tipped over. We didn't want to go. On Monday, we didn't want to go. But what could we say? That we saw a ghost? That a dead man appeared and stared into our souls? We walked into the building with sweaty palms. Room 6B looked normal. I got my notebook. It felt heavy in my hands. As we passed room 3C, we saw it was locked again. When I passed by, I forced myself to look through the small window. No body, no dope, everything in place, except there was something written on the chalkboard. Faint, as if drawn with a dried-out piece of white chalk, but legible. It was written, "I saw you." After seeing that, I froze. Josh saw it too. "That wasn't there Friday," he whispered. Ryan wouldn't even look there. We never talked about it after that week. Room 3C was under maintenance for the rest of the year. Teachers stopped mentioning it. No one asked questions. Eventually, they moved the class to another room. But sometimes, even years later, I'll hear about another kid who forgot something in school and went back after dark. Sometimes the janitor finds a chair tipped over. Sometimes a desk is moved. And if I ever hear that someone's heard a noise, a crash, a creak, a rope tightening, I know exactly what they saw. And I know one day, they'll be waiting for us again. I never used to believe in school ghost stories. You know, the usual haunted restrooms, cursed lockers, teachers who disappeared. It always felt like kid stuff. But that changed the day I stayed after school to finish my project. It was a Thursday, wintertime, the kind of cold that sinks into your fingertips and makes your breath fog up, even indoors. Everyone else had left by 4, but I was behind on an art assignment. Our teacher, Mrs. Bradley, said I could use the classroom as long as I locked up afterward. I didn't think twice. That was my first mistake. By the time I looked up from my sketch pad, it was already dark outside. The only light in the hallway came from scattered emergency fixtures, dull orange glows spaced every few meters. Our school, Oak Ridge Secondary, looked normal in daylight, but something about it after hours felt different. Still, I packed up and locked room 7B, where I had been working, then headed toward the back stairwell. That's when I noticed the door. At the very end of the second-floor hallway, past the science labs, there was a door I'd never seen before. painted the same dull beige as the rest of the school, barely noticeable. But it was open, just slightly. I'm not sure why I walked toward it. Curiosity, maybe boredom, or something deeper. There was no number on the door, just a tarnished brass knob. The hallway lights flickered slightly as I reached for it. It was room 9, as far as I remember. The inside smelled like dust and cold paper. It was an old classroom, older than the others. Wooden desks with ink wells, not the plastic ones we used. A giant chalkboard, shelves lined with yellowed books. Everything was covered in a thin layer of powdery gray dust. I felt like I had stepped into a preserved photograph. And the strange part? It was warm inside, unnaturally warm. My fingers, which had been freezing a second ago, tingled as they adjusted. I stepped in slowly, expecting a rush of cold air from a window, but there were no open windows, just thick old curtains drawn tight. Then I noticed the chalkboard. There was writing, faint, smudged, but readable. It was written, "You came back." I backed toward the door, suddenly uneasy. The knob was gone. No, it was still there, but the door wouldn't move, wouldn't turn, wouldn't rattle, as if it had been welded into the frame. The temperature dropped. I turned around quickly. The air felt thick. I tried to breathe through cotton. From a far left corner of the room, behind the bookshelf, I heard a sound. A voice, soft, fragile, almost childish, saying, "It's not your turn." I froze. My mouth went dry. I stepped back, knocking over one of the old wooden chairs. It clattered across the floor like a gunshot. Silence. I moved toward the door again, yanking, pounding, trying anything. It didn't budge. The lights dimmed. I didn't even notice when the desk behind me shifted, just slightly, dragging itself 2 inches to the left. But I heard the squeak. I turned. All the desks were facing the chalkboard now, except one. It was facing me. I don't know how to explain it. One by one, the chairs began to fill. Faint shadows, like heat ripples in the air, too blurry to define, but definitely there. Students, dozens of them. They weren't speaking. They weren't moving. Just sitting, staring at the board. I backed into the teacher's desk, shaking. The chalk moved. Nothing touched it, but it scraped across the board anyway, slowly writing something new beneath the faded message. It was written, "Take your seat." A chair scraped behind me. I turned. One desk, front row, empty. Waiting. I should have screamed. Should have kicked the door, smashed the window, something. But my legs moved on their own. I sat. The room fell completely silent. Even the soft humming of fluorescent lights was gone. Then the teacher arrived. He came from behind the bookshelf. Tall, impossibly thin, face obscured by motion blur, like looking at something while blinking rapidly. His hands were too long. His neck tilted wrong. And when he opened his mouth, the words didn't come out, they dropped. Like stones in water. Chalk screeched across the board. Numbers. Endless numbers. Formulas that made no sense. Equations with letters that bled off the edge. And my hand, my right hand, began to write on its own. I wasn't holding a pencil, but I was scribbling on the desk. Over and over, I was writing. "Don't look at the window." So of course I looked. The glass was black. Not dark. Not nighttime. Black. Like ink. Like space. And there was something behind it. A reflection, I thought. Until it blinked. It wasn't my reflection. It had no face, just a smudge, like a wet thumb pressed into charcoal. But watched me. I stood. The figure moved, mirroring me. I took a step back. It took a step forward toward the glass. And then it smiled. A split from ear to ear. White, jagged teeth. Too many. The window cracked. I tried to escape. I ran. The chairs didn't move. The students didn't react. But the teacher turned, fast, twitchy, like a spider changing direction. The teacher said, "You haven't finished." The voice hit me like wind, hot and cold at once. I slammed into the door. It gave way. Suddenly, I was in the hallway again. The regular hallway. My notebook clutched in my arms. The door behind me gone. No room 9. Just a blank wall. And a smear of chalk, fading quickly. It was written, "Next time, bring your friends." I never told anyone. Mrs. Bradley asked why I never turned in the project. I said I lost it. I didn't care about the grade. Every once in a while, I walk by that part of the school. And sometimes, not always, just sometimes there's a door at the end of the hallway. No number. Slightly open. I don't go near it. But last week, Ryan said he left his gym bag in the locker room and came back late. He said he saw a classroom he'd never seen before. I begged him not to go in. He said he wouldn't. But today, he was absent. No one knows why, but I think I know the reason why. I always stayed late at school. Not because I was a good student. Far from it. I just didn't like going home. My parents were always fighting, and my house always felt heavy, like the air was soaked in something I couldn't wash off. So I'd linger in the library until it closed, pretending to study, or help the janitor move chairs around just to stay another hour. That's how I ended up being the last person in the school that evening. It was a Tuesday. The halls were already dimming, the late sun casting soft orange light through the high windows. I was walking down the second-floor corridor, heading toward the back staircase when I saw it. The room 13. I stopped in front of it. That wasn't right. My school didn't have a room 13. The numbers went 1 through 12, then skipped straight to room 14. I knew because I'd spent enough afternoons wandering bored through the building, counting room numbers just to kill time. But there it was, a narrow wooden door between room 12 and the old AV closet. Faded gold numbers, 13. The door didn't match the others. It looked older, paler, like the paint had been scraped away by time and fingernails. And yet, I felt something tug me toward it. Not physically, but mentally, like a hook snagged in my brain, pulling gently. It wasn't there before, I told myself out loud. But it was there now. I tried the handle. It turned. Inside, the room was dark. Not pitch black. More like that strange twilight you get just before a thunderstorm. The air smelled like chalk and mold, and something sweetly rotten, like old apples left too long in a desk drawer. There were desks, rows of them, small and wooden, with deep scratches in the surfaces. A teacher's desk sat at the front, its drawers slightly open, and behind the desk, a blackboard, not whiteboard, an actual old-style chalkboard, still dusted with white streaks. It looked frozen in time, like someone had just stepped out for recess and never came back. I reached for my phone to take a picture, but the screen was black. Not off, just dead. Wouldn't turn on. I stepped further in. A breeze passed through the room, even though the windows were shut. That's when I heard the whisper. Just one word, barely audible. It was written. "Stay." I spun around. No one. The desks were empty. Lights were dimming. I backed out slowly and shut the door behind me. When I looked back, the door was gone. Just smooth wall between room 12 and the AV closet. I didn't tell anyone. What was I going to say? Hey, I found a ghost classroom, and then it vanished. No, I'd sound insane. But something changed in me after that. I started noticing odd things. Some days, the halls would feel one room too long. Like I'd passed 12 doors, and then one more. Other days, I'd hear chairs creaking behind closed classroom doors, even though I was alone on that floor. And once, I swear I saw a girl standing at the far end of the hall in a faded uniform, watching me, and then she blinked out when I turned my head. I stopped staying late. A week passed. Then 2. I tried to forget about room 13. Focus on homework, on not failing math, on avoiding home. But one afternoon, I had detention stupid fight with a kid who kept flipping my backpack inside out. Miss Ken had me cleaning up after school in the art room. When I left, the halls were empty again, and as I passed room 12, I felt that same tug in my brain. I turned. Room 13 was there. Same pale wood. Same gold numbers. No hesitation this time. I went in. This time was different. The desks were gone. Now the room was filled with shadows. Moving shadows. They didn't have shapes I could name. Just shifting black forms that looked almost like children hunched over invisible desks. I tried to step back, but the door slammed behind me. I was locked in. One of the shadows turned toward me. It didn't have a face, but somehow I knew it was smiling. "You came back," it whispered, its voice like dry leaves scraping across linoleum. I backed against the chalkboard. On it, words were being written by invisible chalk. "Take a seat." I screamed. No one came. When I got out, I don't remember how I left. All I know is that 1 second I was staring at the chalkboard, and the next I was in the hallway, face down, hands scraped, heart jackhammering. Room 13 was gone again. There was no door, no number, just smooth wall. I ran all the way home. That night, I dreamt of room 13. Only this time, I was one of the shadows, seated, unable to move. I could hear the chalk scratching endlessly behind me, spelling something I couldn't see. But I could feel it, each word carving itself into my skin. I woke up with my arms burning. I checked in the mirror. No cuts, no bruises, but faint white lines had appeared on my forearms, like chalk smudges. I washed them. They didn't come off. I looked it up. My school was built in the 1960s. No record of a room 13. But buried in an old newspaper archive I found online was an article. "Tragedy at Eastwood Elementary. Teacher found dead in locked classroom." Dated 1972. It said a teacher, Mr. Aldridge, had a breakdown, locked himself in his classroom after school, and hung himself from the ceiling fan. When students returned Monday, they found him still swinging. The room was sealed afterward. Rumors of haunting, strange sounds, disappearing supplies. Eventually, the school built a wall over the door. The room was number 13. Final visit. I shouldn't have gone back, but I did. That same pull like gravity made just for me brought me there. It was mid-November. Cold air. Gray skies. Room 13 was waiting. This time, the chalkboard was clean. The desks were full. Each one had a student, children with hollow eyes and dust-covered uniforms. They didn't move, didn't blink. At the front of the room stood a man. Tall, gray suit, rope burns around his neck. His eyes were empty sockets, but I knew he was looking straight at me. He smiled and spoke. "We've been saving you a seat." I turned. The door had vanished again. Behind me, the desk nearest me scraped back, slowly, invitingly. I felt my knees buckle. I woke up in the nurse's office. They said they found me unconscious outside the AV closet. Mild dehydration. Probably stress, they said. I didn't correct them. The white lines on my arms were gone. But sometimes when I walk past that hallway, there's one more door than there should be. And if I listen closely, I can hear chalk scraping across a board, spelling my name. It's been 5 years. I transferred schools, got counseling, tried to forget. But last week, my younger cousin enrolled at Eastwood. He texted me after his first week, writing, "Weird question, but ever heard about a room 13? I didn't reply. He followed up and wrote, "My friend says it's real. Says he saw a door appear near the AV closet. Should we try to find it?" No, they shouldn't. But the thing about room 13 is, you don't find it. It finds you.